Hello everyone. The worried brother took Sinnhat to the doctor again when her throat started to hurt again, even though the drug switcher had been caught and was being punished. The anxiety inside him had not subsided. An invisible obsession seemed to be lurking, making his heart restless for a moment. Has that person really stopped? He whispered, his eyes shining with doubt and fear. Old memories rushed back like a cold wind blowing through his mind. The image of his sister writhing in pain, her face purple, her eyes pleading for help made his heart ache. He could not forget the feeling of helplessness when the doctor announced that just because of a drug switch, he almost lost her forever. Now, when the pain returned, the anxiety inside him grew even greater. He told himself, I will not let that happen again, never again. Sinnhat, who could not speak, quietly wrote on a piece of paper lines describing the burning sensation in his throat, the suffocation, the difficulty in breathing that was gradually squeezing him. The scribbled, trembling words were like small knives piercing straight into his heart. I should have realized it sooner, he blamed himself, his voice choked in his throat, unable to hesitate any longer when his sister kept signaling that her body was falling apart. Her eyes were panicked. Her lips moved silently. He felt like the whole world was collapsing. The feeling of helplessness tightened his chest. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with each beat, hurriedly dialing the number to call a taxi. There was nothing left in his mind but a single thought. I have to go to the hospital. Immediately. Even if it was just a minute late, it could be too late. In another development, the mother-in-law, the one behind the drug swap that harmed Sinnhat, was being questioned by him. Despite the pain that his wife had not recovered, Hang still kept her calm and cold. He placed a piece of paper in front of her. Why do you want to harm her? The mother-in-law was slightly confused, but then tried to keep her face firm. Although all the evidence was stacked against her, the mother-in-law still firmly denied responsibility. In front of Hang, she raised her head, her voice cold. I did nothing. You guys wrongly accused me. But her eyes avoided. Her hands trembled slightly, making her words contradictory. Hang stared. Why were you the only one who approached the drug that day? He asked, his voice choked. She still shook her head. I just wanted the best for her. The atmosphere fell silent. Good, but how? That question hung in Hang's mind, along with a cold feeling spreading down her spine when she realized, sometimes, family affection can also be a cover for crime. Even when faced with clear evidence, the mother-in-law stubbornly denied the crime. Her voice was cold but her eyes were wavering. Hang's heart was aching, but the truth had no way back. He was determined, put her in jail. The mother-in-law was startled, struggling violently. You dare to do that to me? He did not reply, his eyes were heavy, then quietly pulled her away. The sound of the iron door locking echoed in the long hallway, as cold as his heart at this moment. He knew that if he did not find the person behind it, if the truth was buried, his wife might never recover. And if that happened, he would carry that regret for the rest of his life. Despite the pain, he was forced to choose justice, for his wife and for his own conscience. Even though she was imprisoned in the cold room, the mother-in-law still refused to admit her guilt. She frantically pounded on the iron door, the sound reverberating through the silent hallway. Let me go. I did nothing. You guys are too much. She screamed, her eyes both angry and panicked. Outside, Hang stood silently, her back turned, but her heart was restless. Even though she was the one who had raised him since he was young, what had happened to his wife could not be ignored. Each knock on the door seemed to pierce his heart, making him wonder, am I doing the right thing? But then he remembered his wife's pale face, her cold hands, and the words asking for help. No, he could not soften. The truth had to be revealed, no matter how painful it was. In the midst of his confusion, Hang suddenly stopped. He remembered that the woman who had claimed to have his child was at his house. He immediately asked his colleague to take care of him at the headquarters and hurried back. Doubt rose in his heart. Was this related to his wife's tragedy? As soon as he entered the house, Hang looked straight at Hyen, who was sitting on the floor. He coldly said, My mother was arrested for switching drugs to harm my wife. He stopped, carefully observing every expression on her face. A moment of surprise passed, then she quickly regained her composure. But that look made him suspicious of her. Hang stood in front of Hyan, her eyes cold as ice. He spoke slowly but firmly, "My mother is no longer here, and you should also leave this house. I don't love you, and I won't marry you." Hyan was stunned, her face confused. She tried to stay calm, but her eyes were red. "You said you would take responsibility," she stammered. Sinnhat shook his head. "Responsibility doesn't mean marriage. You should leave before things get worse." But Hyan said Hyan had nowhere to go. So Hang didn't say another word, coldly leading the woman and her youngest son to another house on the side of the road. "Stay here for a while," he said firmly. His eyes had no emotion. Then he turned around, leading his son and Hyan out of the house, leaving Hyan and her fatherless child alone in the room. An unspeakable pain rose in his heart, but he knew this was the only way to keep things from getting more complicated. A new life was just beginning, but no one really knew what tomorrow would bring. After leaving where Hyan was staying, Hang led her eldest son into her mother-in-law's house, full of hope to find her wife in these difficult days. However, as soon as she saw him, her mother-in-law shouted, her voice filled with anger, "What are you doing here? You've caused so much trouble. Where's the face to show up?" Hang was silent, did not argue, just tried to stay calm so as not to make the situation more tense. His mother-in-law said his wife had gone to the hospital. Hang's heart felt like it was being squeezed. A feeling of helplessness filled his heart, full of regret and worry in his mind. The question, "Is my wife okay?" Hang hurriedly left his mother-in-law's house, carrying his son in his arms. His eyes were filled with anxiety, his heart beating fast as the car sped towards the hospital. Every passing moment seemed to drag on endlessly in fear. As for Hang's mother, being locked in a cold room, Hang's mother still refused to give in. She kept looking for any openings, looking for a way to escape. Suddenly, she pretended to feel the need to go to the bathroom, knocking loudly on the door, demanding to go out. "Let me go. I can't take it anymore," she shouted loudly, trying to put pressure on the guard. And finally, one of Hang's colleagues agreed to open the door for his mother to go to the bathroom. Although the policeman followed her eyes kept darting around, observing every corner, every door, looking for even the smallest chance to escape. She knew she didn't have much time left. Once she was escorted back, the door to freedom would be completely closed. Her mind was working like crazy. She furtively observed every corner of the room, every object, her eyes constantly darting back and forth looking for an opportunity. Then her gaze stopped at an old sack, hanging diagonally on the cleaning shelf in the corner. Her heart pounding, she walked slowly, pretending to tremble, one hand holding onto the wall, the other quickly snatching the sack, cleverly hiding it behind her shirt. The policeman was turning away at that time, not suspecting anything. Suddenly, she rushed forward, yanking the sack over his head, causing him to panic and stagger back. She did not hesitate, using all her strength to push him down. The policeman struggled, trying to pull the sack off his head, but she threw herself into a violent struggle. Her powerful hand pulled his arm, causing them both to stagger. "Let go," he shouted. But she only tightened her grip. In that chaotic moment, she pushed him to the floor, then gasped and rushed out of the room like a cornered animal. She ran along, trying to escape, her heart pounding in her chest. Every step was a gamble with her life. She had no idea where she could go, but she knew one thing: if she was caught, the truth would be revealed, and she, the one behind it all, could not let that happen. The policeman staggered to remove the sack from his head, gasping for breath in surprise and anger. He turned around, but she was nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" he shouted, rushing out. Without hesitation, he took out his phone and quickly dialed Hang's number. Alarm. "She escaped. I don't know which direction she ran to. Request a complete lockdown of the area immediately," he said urgently, his voice mixed with fear and self-reproach. When Hang arrived at the scene, the hallway was quiet again, with only her colleague standing there, panting next to the sack that had been thrown on the ground. His face was pale and he was sweating profusely. "I was so careless. As soon as I took off the sack, she disappeared like the wind." Hang looked around the scene one more time. He sighed, not blaming anyone, nor angry. He knew that this matter could not be delayed any longer. "Okay, let's go find it." His voice was low but decisive. The colleague nodded. And the two immediately got in the car and sped off to find the person who had escaped. At the same time, in another place, Sinnhat's mother-in-law stealthily stepped out of the bushes, her figure hunched over. Her hands trembled as she clutched the raincoat she had hastily stolen from the roadside, the thin, wet, cold fabric clinging tightly to her body. She covered her face with an old scarf, leaving only her eyes, clearly filled with confusion and fear. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, hitting her face like cold whips, but she kept walking, not daring to stop. Her feet stumbled on the small, slippery and cold alley. No one recognized the woman, who used to be the mistress of a decent family, now quietly running towards the house on the side of the road, where Hyan and the child were staying. With each step closer to the house, her heart felt heavier, not because of physical exhaustion, but because of an unnamed worry that was squeezing her chest. There was something she did not dare to admit, a truth that was about to spill out, just waiting for the right moment to explode. Hyan jumped when the door of the rented room opened slightly, and in the gray rain, a familiar figure stood silently at the threshold. The wet scarf could not cover the face that had aged from months of stress. It was Nying's mother. She sat up and asked her. Her heart was pounding, both surprised and extremely confused. Why are you here? Hyan stammered, her eyes panicked. Nying's words from not long ago immediately echoed in her head. My mother has been detained. She will not be able to harm you or the child anymore, however. Now that woman was standing right in front of her, in the flesh, drenched in rain. Her eyes unreadable. Don't be afraid, Nying's mother said softly, her voice hoarse from cold and fatigue. I didn't come to harm you. Hyan stood still. A series of questions arose in her heart. If she wasn't detained, then who was lying, Hing? Or is there something even more terrible hidden? Anne told Hyan that she was wronged. She escaped from prison and ran away here. Hyan asked, but why? Hing said you were. Shut up, Hing's mother interrupted, her eyes flashing with a rare tension. She quickly walked towards the door, reached out, glanced around once more before turning the lock. No one can know I'm here. Do you understand? If you still love the child, then be quiet. The click sound rang out as the lock locked. The room was now locked from the inside, like a sealed box filled with secrets about to explode. Hyan hugged her child tightly to her chest. Her heart pounding, she began to understand that this was more than she had imagined, and she had been drawn into something much more dangerous. After locking the door, Hang's mother turned back, her eyes still filled with vigilance. Hyan sat still, not daring to ask another word. The atmosphere was as tense as a string, with only the sound of rain falling on the metal roof and the sound of the child breathing softly in her arms. She leaned back. Just a moment later, Hang's mother fell into a fitful sleep, her lips moving as if she was still whispering something unspoken, while the person who had switched the drugs secretly escaped in the dark. In another corner of the small house, Sinnhat's mother sat in the quiet yard, working and thinking. She knew nothing about the escape. In her mind at the moment, there was only one worry. Her daughter was in the hospital. Her eyes were red and tired after many sleepless nights. I wonder how the child is now. Is she still in pain? Can she eat anything? She asked quietly, but no one answered. While he was desperately searching for his mother in the rain, Hang suddenly received news. His mother was at the old house by the roadside. Without hesitation, he immediately turned the car around, his heart pounding. The wind and rain hit his face, but he could only think of one thing. I have to get there right away. As soon as the car stopped, Hang rushed straight to the door, worry surrounding every step. The knocking on the door was urgent and urgent. Mom, are you in there? It's me, Hang, his voice echoed, cold and anxious. Hang's mother jumped. In an instant, her face turned pale. Her panicked eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal, without saying a word. She rushed to the mat in the corner of the room, pulling it to cover her body. Don't open it, she hissed, her voice choked. You can't let him see me. If you open your mouth, I swear I won't let you. Hyan was scared, her heart pounding. She had never seen Hang's mother like that. Her eyes were wild, exuding something more terrifying than anger, despair. Promise, she growled from behind the curtain. Promise. From behind the mat, Hang's mother was breathing heavily, her eyes darting around. The knocking on the door was getting more and more urgent. As if Hang was about to rush in, she clenched her hands. Cold sweat pouring out despite the cold rain. "No, this place is not safe," she muttered. Without having time to think further, she immediately rushed out of the corner of the room. She tiptoed quickly, her trembling hands gently pulling the door leading up to the small wooden stairs leading to the second floor of the house, and crawled under the blanket on the floor. "Don't say anything. Not a word." She turned around and growled, her eyes sharp as knives, then disappeared upstairs in the dim darkness. When the footsteps of Hang's mother had stopped on the second floor, Hyen dared to step out of her position. She held her sleeping child in her arms, her heart still pounding from the tension. The knocking on the door and Hang's voice still echoed with urgency, as if piercing deep into her ears. As soon as the door opened, Hang almost rushed in, her face tense, her eyes cold and sharp. His shirt was soaked with rain, sticking to his body, his breathing heavy from running. "Why are you only opening the door now? Did you hear me calling but not come out?" he asked, his voice harsh. Huyen was startled, hugging her child tighter. I was putting the baby to sleep. I couldn't hear clearly." Hang didn't answer, her eyes swept around the room as if examining her. He stopped, looking straight at her. "Someone said they saw my mother appear nearby. Is she here?" Hyen hesitated for a second, then shook her head. "No. I didn't see anyone." Hang was silent for a moment. He clearly didn't believe her. Without saying anything more, he walked past her and went straight into the house, his eyes constantly scanning every corner. The small wooden staircase leading to the second floor was still ajar. Each step still had traces of water. Hang narrowed her eyes. He slowly walked towards the stairs, each step heavy as lead. On the second floor, his mother was holding her breath in a dark corner. As for Hyen, holding her child in her arms, she could only stand still, her heart pounding. She didn't know what would happen if he discovered the truth. The mother trembled, her mouth mumbling Buddha's name as a way to calm herself in the midst of panic. "Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha." The chanting was slow and steady, like a ring of salvation. Covering the quiet space of the small room, each chant seemed to try to pull her out of the darkness of fear and despair that surrounded her. She trembled, hoping that the prayer could protect her from the impending dangers. Even though she knew she couldn't avoid it forever, she still prayed for a miracle, for peace, even if only for a moment. As Hang's footsteps gradually disappeared behind the second floor door, his mother breathed a sigh of relief, cold sweat rolling down her forehead. She leaned against the wall, eyes closed, trying to regulate her rapid breathing. Downstairs, Hang had just walked down the stairs, her face still tense but her eyes less worried. However, after checking carefully and finding no trace, he was helpless and walked out the door. Before leaving, Hang turned back to look at the house one more time, her heart still filled with worries. As soon as her son left the house, Hang's mother let out a sigh of relief and quietly walked down to the first floor. Her eyes became cold and determined as she looked straight at Hyen. "No one can catch her," she said in a confident, determined voice. "No matter what happens, I will protect you and my grandchild at all costs." Hyen looked at her, both surprised and feeling a little comforted by those words. Even though everything was still unclear and full of danger, at least this mother still had a strong belief. An invisible shield protecting them from the upcoming storm. After leaving the boarding house where Hyen was staying, Hang did not return immediately. He drove straight to his mother-in-law's house, his heart still heavy. As soon as he saw his mother-in-law open the door, Hang stepped in, her face tense. "The drug switcher has escaped, Mom," he said, his voice low and decisive. His mother-in-law was stunned, her hand that was pouring tea paused in midair. "How could she escape? She's being guarded. Someone is helping. Everything is in chaos. I'm afraid there's someone else behind it, and that person hasn't shown up yet." The mother and son were sitting and chatting. The atmosphere was tense. Hang's phone suddenly rang. Seeing the name and kin on the screen, Hang immediately picked up the phone. "I'm listening and can." On the other end of the line, an urgent voice rang out. "Hang, new news from the hospital. Sinnhat's condition has worsened," the doctor said. There's a high chance he'll never be able to speak again. Hang's whole body froze. He was silent for a few seconds, his eyes wide open, his breath caught in his throat. No, it can't be, he whispered, his hand holding the phone gradually loosened. His mother-in-law looked at her son-in-law, her heart aching when she saw his pale face and sunken eyes from shock. What's wrong, son? Hang didn't answer right away. He just clenched the phone tightly. His head bowed, his voice hoarse. Sinnhat might never be able to speak again. The space seemed to freeze. The room, which had been quiet, fell into a heavy and suffocating silence.
Mẹ là ánh sáng giữa đời, dẫu bao giông bão vẫn cười dịu êm, bàn tay gầy guộc thân quen, gánh bao vất vả không tên tháng ngày, lặng thầm chẳng nói một lời, yêu con bằng cả cuộc đời lặng sâu. Mẹ là tất cả nhiệm màu.